Hello, everybody. As you're coming in, please note that we will have you muted because there's so many that come to these that if all the mics are open, it gets a bit weird. So talk amongst yourselves. There's been a few technical issues with the email with the link, so we're going to start a few minutes late. So it's not because we have lost track of time. It's because we just want to give people a little more time to get in with the link that they have probably just received as a duplicate for one that seems to have gone astray. My name's Dave Roberts. I'm going to be taking you through this morning, and I'll keep coming back to you with pieces of information as our time unfolds. Can I encourage you to use the chat if you want to greet the other delegates, or somebody's on the call that you'd like to give a shout out to. It differs from computer to computer, but for a lot of people, if they're using a laptop or a PC, they should be able to see a chat icon, or it'll be under more. Hello, everybody. If you're just arriving, I'll repeat what I've said over the last few minutes. We have you muted because 67 open microphones might create a bit of cacophony. You'll be able to unmute when you go out into the breakout rooms, which will be part of what we do. If you want to greet others, then please use the chat function, which many of you will be able to access via the bar, which has all the information on it. Appears on different parts of the screen, depending on what machine you're using. Because the specialist event booking system seems to have sent out half the emails, but not the other half, we have sent it out again, and we're going to delay our start for a few minutes just to give people an opportunity to get in. So we're only doing that because we want to give people the best possible experience, and we will start promptly at 10:05. A lot of stuff happening in the chat if you want to drop in there. People giving us the weather situation, where they come from. People from all over the country. New Forest. Oh, somebody from Copenhagen. Greetings to our Danish friends who are often with us at our events. Historically, we've had people from literally all over the world. So if I see one of those, I'll, or if one of the rest of the team sees one of those, let's give them a bit of a shout out.
Yeah, we've got Switzerland as well now.
Splendid. Okay, everybody, 2 minutes and we'll be into action. echo the prayer there from Amanda in Sheffield. She says, praying that God will bless everyone who's feeling tired and worn out today, that His Holy Spirit will fill you with a new vision of all the good things that God has in store for you and your children. Seems to be quite a consensus that it's overcast where you are, but here in the sunny south. Okay. We're going to start. I think we've got the kind of number already turned up that we thought might do. And I'm going to pray. Dear Lord God and Father, we thank you for this morning. We thank you for all that you have for us, the wisdom from the various, the 5 people that we'll be particularly sharing. Lord, give us a little seed of thought and insight today that will serve us well as we serve you with children. Amen. Okay. I'd like to talk to you briefly about where we're going to go this morning. So in a moment, I'm going to share briefly a thought or a perspective that will hopefully set our time in context. And then we're going to hear from Andy Saunders, who's going to share on managing your team, being part of a group of volunteers, the things that you might like to be thinking about while you're in lockdown, and beginning to think about how you might go forward. But initially, I'd just like to share with you some thoughts about the geography of the Holy Spirit. Now, some of you are thinking, Dave, geography of the Holy Spirit? What is wrong with you? But bear with me for a few minutes or so, and it'll all make perfect sense. So let's think about this for a minute. One of the things that we're going to touch on later is the idea of outdoor church. And we're very used to meeting in buildings. Many of us will have an understanding that the church isn't a building, it's a group of people moving in the power of the Spirit, taking the Bible seriously, and following Jesus. But in reality, we don't often think of ourselves as convening outside with people. And perhaps even of the outdoors being a place for spiritual discovery and encounter. But let's just go right back to our roots for a minute and understand that at the beginning of time and our existence with God, Adam and Eve walked in the garden with God. Later on, as the Bible story unfolds, the people of Israel wandered around for quite a long time before they entered the Promised Land. Their existence was outdoors, but they were led by a pillar of fire, and they began to meet or connect with God in the tabernacle. One of the songs that really touches me at the moment is a song called So Will I, which comes from Hillsongs in Australia. And there's a great line in there. It says, if all creation sings your praises, so will I. And so as we come to think about the outdoors as one of our topics for today, this line resonates with me, and I hope it will resonate with you. The ancient people of Israel, who we follow in the footsteps of, spoke of a God who was worshipped by the whole of creation, not merely by the humans, and uses metaphors of nature to describe the praise that is being offered up to God. When we think about Jesus just for a minute, he told his stories on boats, on mountains, and in marketplaces. He prayed in gardens and he wrestled with the Father about the pain and the nature of the crucifixion in a grove of olives. The tabernacles and temples were important to the ancient people, but the Spirit dwelt in his people, and buildings became secondary, not unimportant, but secondary. Jesus often talked about how the temple would be torn down, but he was now the temple. And then he told us that we were the temples of the Holy Spirit. Jesus used the language of gardens, farms, sowers, mustard seeds, fig trees, and vines. The book of Psalms tells us that the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. And the book of Colossians reminds us that he has come to reconcile all things to himself. So I just wanted to put those seed thoughts with you as we begin our two segments. The first segment is going to be led and introduced by Andy Saunders, and he's going to talk about what it means to help your team, your church, your people, your volunteers through a time of transition. In what way is this a time of transition? Well, it looks as if at some point later in the year we'll be able to meet in person inside a building and return in some way to some of our normal ways. But there's still quite a bit of time until then, and time for us to take stock of who we are and how we do things. And so Andy's going to walk us through that. Then he's going to hand over to me, and I've interviewed 4 people. Some of them will be on the call, and we might call them in for supplementary questions about the nature of outdoor meeting. We have a lady from Wild Church, a lady who wrote a book called Outdoor Church. We have 2 other people, and I'll introduce them nearer the time. So we want to look at what it means to be in transition, and then at some very practical ideas about how we can move forward in transition. Andy Saunders is a trainer and consultant. He's worked extensively in children's ministry for quite a long time. And his work now is under the banner of Lighthouse Ministries, and he's going to lead us through this time of reflection. I don't think Andy's going to give you all the answers, but he's going to give you a way to frame the questions for yourself. Andy, you're very welcome.
Great, thank you. And it's lovely to be with you this morning. We are going to go on a reasonably quick journey, so just put your seatbelt on, clip it on, and get ready for 5 markers, just 5 pointers that I trust will be of help to you as we go through the coming months and into the future. So it's great to be with you today. Now, the magical moment when we have to go into screen share. So let's just see what happens as I share my screen with you. Oh, that seemed to work. That's encouraging, which is good news. Great. So, as we think about the coming months and into the future, just these 5 markers I would just like to put to you for you to reflect upon into the future. They're not set in concrete, and they're for you to see what would work best for you in your community and in your situation. And a time of transition. So what I'd like to do is put this thought to you. There's an organisation called Chaos Pilot that's based out in the Netherlands, and they have taken the phrase, we use that phrase, don't we? We just have to think outside of the box. And one of the things Chaos Pilot encourages us to do is to think inside the box. What is the best way for us to take our team and our workers and our families and children with us as we reflect before God in what the future might be like in children's and family ministry? So the idea is to stay inside the box and you push the sides out with everybody being consulted and chatted with. And although that takes longer, my experience has been that from that you get more of a greater understanding of what you're trying to do. And when things go well, great. And also when things don't go quite so well and you need to take a step back. So as I share this with you this morning, think about that phrase. Don't think outside the box, but think inside the box. And how can you take your team and take children and family with you as you look to see what God might be asking of you to do differently in the future? We have a video to watch. We do have a video to watch now, and it's come from New Zealand, and it's called Bubble Church, a special message for children, for kids, about what it has been to follow Jesus through this time of a pandemic. And as we watch it, just reflect back on what church has been like for you two in the past year, and just see what markers it might give to you as well that could be of help to you in the future. There's some great phrases in there that could be of help and some quite deep theological thinking as well. And yes, it is available on the internet. So after this morning, when we all say goodbye to one another, you can go looking for it. So let's have a watch.
Bubble Church, a special message for kids. COVID-19 has changed how we learn, play and meet together. And we cannot meet together in our churches at the moment. We need to stay safe at home in our bubbles. And you may wonder, when can we see each other at church again? The church is not the building we meet in. The church, it's the people. It's you and me. Perhaps God is doing something new. And church may look a little different in this season. Home churches are popping up all over New Zealand. Small groups of faithful friends who love God, the church and their community. We can still worship God by singing. We can still pray. And our prayers can make a real difference. We can still have fun together. We can still learn how to be more like Jesus. We can still shine brightly in our communities. We can still help the last, lost and the least. We can still seek God with all of our hearts. We can still share our gifts and talents with God and one another. It may not always be easy, but we are creative problem solvers. So until we can meet together again as one big church family, we trust that God is with us in all our bubbles. And that God can grow something beautiful in this season.
I wonder how that resonated with you as we look back on the past year. It doesn't seem a year ago, coming this Monday, that the Prime Minister sat us all down one night, didn't he, and said, this is it, a year ago now. And I, living down here in Bournemouth, part of a church down here in Bournemouth, I work part-time for a church in Mudderford as their children's family and worker, and also as a dad with a child at university and another one whose gap year just went AWOL. We have all those feelings and emotions maybe going through us as we look back on that past year and all that's happened to us. And there may be some points on that video that just kind of clicked with yourself about how church has been different for you and for the children and for the families and the community that you are engaged in. All these things can be very different compared to what it was a year ago. And the fourth thoughts I want to put your way as we carry on thinking in this time of transition that we are going into is the first one is, how's the team doing? And you may be praying, I hope there's still a team, after the past year. How are the team doing? How are you feeling about possibly starting ministry again, face to face again in the coming months? How am I feeling about that? Going away from being on Zoom all the time to actually being with people face to face? How's our confidence levels in actually getting things going again? And also standing near people and talking with them and all those things. There may be a need just to say to the team, let's start socializing again. Let's start praying together. Let's just start being team and getting to know one another and just see where we're at as individuals. There may be some honesty needing to be there about how we feel. My wife used to be a primary school teacher, and she said when she went back in September, there was always that great fear of, as a teacher, can I do this? You know, that's after 6 weeks. Can I still teach a class and everything? Well, for us, it could be a year since we've actually been face to face with people. A few months ago, Lucy Moore from Message Church, they brought out a risk assessment form to help groups who are thinking at that point of starting again. But one of the things she also said, which was really helpful, was don't just expect it to be how it was. Please stop and really think about that. How's your team? What about how the families are going to be feeling, etc., etc. There's a lot of underlying concerns that might be there. So talk through with your leadership about how we can support our team and really get a sense from them about how they're feeling. There may be some team members who feel they need to step aside for a while before they come back into ministry in that area. There may be others who may want to join, but there is a time of rethinking, I feel, for us as a team and getting them together. And don't just rush back, you know, find a way of gradually building things up again for you as a team. So how's the team doing? As that picture shows you, how are you going to put the puzzle back together? What picture is there going to be at the end as you come back as a team? Some of you may be saying, I am the team. You know, it's me. You know, you may need someone to talk it through with you and pray with you to see how things are at this time in your own life. So as things have changed for us, things have also changed for the children and families that we up to a year ago might have had a regular contact with. And just want to share something with you from this booklet, Becoming a Parent Discipling Church. Care for the Family and their kitchen table project had a get-together this week, and they've produced this book. If you get a hold of it from them, it could be a great help to you. But they've got some little markers in there where they've actually shared about where families might be at now. So it's been a year possibly since we've met together and worshipped together and learnt about Jesus Christ together. So where might those families be? And because for the families, their way of ministry, their way of being encouraged and nurtured and discipled has also changed dramatically. And in this booklet, they come out with 4 really nice, easy thoughts. I just like, well, it's nice in communicating them, a challenge for how we work them out. Well, for families, they came out and said this. How have you as a family adapted the way you've met with God in the past year? How have families changed in how they've met with God or not, possibly? What has been going on in the past year in the way your church has been supporting you as a family, or for you, for your children in your family? And what has worked and hasn't worked in those 2 areas, and how you've tried to stay close to God, and what the church has offered to you in the past year? And then the final question they were asking the families was, what do you feel you need in the future to carry on getting to know God more individually and as a family? And in this booklet, they kind of say to families, chat about those things, because that might be a great help to you. The great challenge and the great sadness might be is that we may find that we have physically lost some people when we start to come back. We might find that some families spiritually are really struggling and are feeling guilty about that. There might be some families, in some of the ways we're going to hear about this morning, who are actually excited and have grown in their faith because they've discovered the countryside and new ways of meeting with God, you know, and you want to hear about those things. But how has ministry and church changed in the past year for those that have been meeting with it from a distance? And how has it changed families and children in their desire to get to know God? The picture there is of leaves, isn't it? The different seasons leaves go through. Many of us, maybe you're the same as me, I'm looking at our trees, and we've got a tree in our front garden. I'm saying, just come out in leaves, please, to show that winter's gone, you know. But seasons are changed things, and this season of the past year may well have changed us all. So in a moment, we're going to disappear into some breakout groups. I thought that was a lovely picture. We've kind of had enough of Zoom, haven't we? We just want to hit it with our shoes and say, yay, go away. We've had enough of looking at screens. So for a few minutes, probably for about 5 or 6 minutes, we're going to send you off into groups in a moment and just have a chat about this past year. Is there something about this whole area of how is the team doing? What can you share briefly with one another about that? And secondly, how do you feel the past year has been in what the church has offered to children and families, or about the way in which you might have seen the life and ministry of children and families in your community change for good, and maybe pastorally may have raised concerns. So we're going to send you off just to have a chat and just hear a bit more about what's been going on around the country.
Just a technical thing, as you're going, you don't particularly have to do anything. If it asks for permission for anything, say yes, and we'll be in the chat rooms for several minutes. It could be up to 10. So quick introductions to each other and then into the questions. Thanks, everybody. Chat rooms coming up.
It's always quite scary when it does this, because you think your eyes are doing a what's it on you, really.
Think everyone's back?
Okay, brilliant. Okay, well, in faith I say, thank you for talking. So, hopefully you had a nice chat and quickly ran off and made another drink and came back possibly as well. So what we're going to do, we're going to have just a couple more slides to look at and think about, and then we're going to fling you off into those groups again just briefly, okay? So just keep your seatbelt on and off we go. So a time of transition. We thought briefly about team. Take that away. Where's your team at? What do you need to discover? How they're feeling? We thought briefly about what families and children might or might not have been doing over the past year to spiritually help one another and keep walking with Jesus, and the highs and lows of that. And the umbrella hanging over all of that, says I, someone who still does mime at times, is that fact of thinking inside the box. How do we take everybody with us? All our families, the children, the leadership of our churches, in thinking through how things have been and where we're going. So well done for getting to this point. And the magical share screen will now happen. And we'll go back to the battered tellies at this point in time. So this time of transition, third slide, the third picture to think about. What is church now for our families and children? And now, this isn't very good grammatically, but you know what I mean. Now is every day moving forward from today. What is it they're looking for? What is it they've experienced and gained in the past year that is possibly making them feel different about what it is to be part of a church family for them? And to be honest, what does it mean for me? What has this last year meant for me as well? In how I've met, or not always, with God easily, how we as a family have done that, my wife and I, how we have met with others from a distance. I've changed as a person partly because of this past year's experience about what it is to be church. We've all been affected, and some of that has been easy and exciting. Some of that has been a challenge. And I would put it to us all, including myself here, that maybe we need to go and do a little bit of listening. Maybe we need to go and talk to some of these families and our children. Great to sit down and chat with children when you can and ask them how this past year has been and hear what they've got to say, maybe through a game you play or some doodling you do, or for me, Play-Doh. Get the Play-Doh out or plasticine. But start to find out where they're at now in their walk with God or their experience of church. Because I think that might be a real help to us all in as we try to move forward and do things differently. Not because we just want to do things differently. I think maybe our society has changed, we have changed, and the way we do church might be different as well. And also, as we thought earlier about our teams, how they're feeling. But we can't do this in isolation of the rest of the church. So sit down with the church leadership, because adults will be feeling different about church as well, and see what comes out of that as you chat together. A couple of questions you could ask is, one, what do we want to stop? That's an exciting word, stop. You know, this is an opportunity to get off the treadmill, possibly, as we have in the past year. What do we want to stop after we've listened and prayed and discerned inside the box, pushing the sides out, what people have been sharing with us? And then secondly, what do we want to start? What do we want to have a go at? How do we want to relate to our local schools or our preschool unit now that maybe meets near us or uses our building? What does this mean for supporting the families in our streets we've got to know, or the adults in our streets we've got to know as we've been community in the past year? So what is it that we need to stop? And that's okay, things have a season. And what is it possibly God is asking us also to start as we've discerned what the children and families have been saying and what the leadership feel as well the future may be like for us. And that could be exciting, but also could make our blood go a little bit cold. We're starting to do that at the church I worship at and the church I work at. We are tentatively starting to think about those issues so we can try, humanly speaking, to hear God's voice and then put those things into practice and see how they go. We will make mistakes. That's okay, because what we're trying to do, we are trying to make an impression. We are trying to impress the love and the joy and the challenges at times, but the love and the joy of knowing Jesus Christ in our life. And that means maybe at times we have to try and be organic. That is, we need to try things out and see how they grow and see what we learn from them. A few years ago now, 8 or 9 years ago now, I was under a consultant at the local hospital to do with cancer. And he said to me, the thing is, Andy, some of what we do is artistic. It's from an artistic perspective. And some of it is from a scientific perspective. Some of it's to do with art. Some of it is to do with science. Some of our ministry that we're involved in is to do with things that we are certain about, taking that program off the shelf or using that website or using things we know that are already in place for us. But some of it has that organic, that artistic side. Let's discern before God what things we should try and see how they go. And from that, we give people the opportunity to become nearer to Christ and therefore for children and families to see what we have to offer. And these things take time. It's an art and a science. It's a discerning of what we should be trying to do in the future and the coming months. Here are 4 little phrases that I read about recently that I found really helpful about how we can help children and families at this time, helping them have an impression of Jesus in their life through what we can give to them from him. One is about making church, whatever it may be and however that may be lived out, a place where they feel at home, where children and families feel at home. That could be a walk in the forest, as we're going to hear about soon. It could be socialising, it could be going off to different places, it could be meeting in a building. Secondly, that we need to be real with one another. We need to listen to how children are feeling. I'm sure many of you do that all the time. We need to listen to parents. God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. We need to be intentional in saying before God, Lord, please help me discern what is the way forward in the coming months. Please note that's plural, not we're going to get it all sorted overnight. And fourthly, children and families are looking for a place where they can belong. Aren't we all? Aren't we all looking for a place that we spiritually can call home in our family, church family, a place where we can be real with one another, a place where we can be intentional and really impress onto others and onto ourselves what it is to follow Jesus, and a place where we feel we belong, because we are ambassadors in God's kingdom, we are living in our communities, and we are seeking to share Jesus in those situations. But this will take time. It's not going to happen overnight. And as we carry on thinking about this morning, as we've got a minute or so just to disappear very briefly, I just would like you to take away and say to yourselves, not to have this done by tomorrow, what is it that Andy has shared that is helpful, and put aside the rest, but what can I take away from this part that will be helpful to me? And maybe as we end this morning, we'll do that again with the rest of what we're going to hear. So Dave is just going to quickly send us off.
We're just waiting for everybody to get back, which will happen in about 3 seconds. Right. Okay. My name's Dave Roberts. I'm part of the team that put these workshops together. I'm a pastor in a church in Osborn, and I've been involved in children's ministry training for too long to even mention, as it will reveal, my advanced years. What we're going to do over the next little while is look at the idea of outdoor church. And there are 2 reasons for looking at it. One, it's always been a good idea and has been part of the practice of many churches. And by that, I mean church camp, Boys Brigade, Scouts, other activities that take children outdoors. If you know anything about organised sport in this country, it originated from our forebearers in the Victorian age wanting to engage young people in physical activity and community outside of the church building. So we're looking at a tradition that has deep roots, although it may not always be near the front of our imagination. So what I'd like to do is, this is mainly going to be me showing 4 videos of people that I've engaged with about why outdoor church is a good idea at this time, but also might play a part in our ministry thinking going forward. So I'm going to share my screen, and we're starting off with a lady called Jenni Osborn, and Jenni lives in Osborn too, and she's just written a book called From Isolation to Community, and devotes a whole chapter to the idea of outdoor activity and outdoor church. So I'm going to click the button here and hope that everything works as it should do. And I'll keep coming back and talking to you as we go along.
No sound, Dave.
Part of the transition process and actually the continuing contact process in a lot of areas of youth work, and maybe. Ooh. Jenni, you recently wrote a book called From Isolation to Community and identified outdoors as a very important part of the transition process and actually the continuing contact process in a lot of areas of youth work and maybe even children's ministry. But in the midst of all of that, you said there was 3 words that we should be hanging our strategy and thinking on. Can you just share those 3 words with us now and why you believe they're important?
Yeah, sure. So the 3 words are hope, community, and sanctuary. And these are 3 things that I think are really important. I think a lot of youth and children's workers have been offering these 3 kind of concepts to our young people and our children for quite a while, but they're going to become even more important as we go through into this post-COVID era that we're going in. So I think for the first one is hope, and of course hope is really important. We know as Christians that hope is what we live and breathe. We understand how important hope is to us as human beings, and I think that holding out that hope to our young people and our children at a time when you know, things that could look quite hopeless for our young people in particular at the moment. So being able to keep that flame alive for them is really important. Community is really important because you know, we've spent a year with such restrictive measures in place that our young people and our children are really struggling to kind of try and re-enter living as part of a community. Going back to schools has been really complicated. There's been lots of high emotion. There's been lots of difficulties around reintegration. So community and showing the way in terms of how to build community and how to be part of community is really important. And then thirdly, sanctuary. Sanctuary again is something that we as Christians really recognise is really important, and we have this kind of image of offering sanctuary from, and then also sanctuary for. So offering sanctuary from some of the hardships that surround us in life and surround our young people and children, offering sanctuary for that idea of kind of expanding our notion of where we might go in life and what life is all about, really. So those three things are going to be really key in the going forward.
Now, when you were researching the book, those three words are obviously near the front of your mind, or they emerged from your research, but you actually dedicated a chapter to outdoor work. And what do you, from that research, was there some things that sort of kind of stuck out to you where you thought, actually, that's really important and resonated with you?
I think partly I noticed as I was talking to people, talking to lots of youth workers across the country, I noticed that a lot of them have been doing outdoor youth work. So that ranges from, you know, being given a garden, a wildlife garden in the grounds of Cardiff Castle, which I would love to go and see because it just sounds amazing, through to kind of growing seeds, offering seeds out to people to grow, through to wide games on the green during the summer months and detached work as well in town centres once youth workers were able to do that. So it really stood out as something that a lot of youth workers have been doing during the pandemic kind of year that we've had, and this year of real restriction. And also I think we know, don't we, that outdoors is a really good place for us to be. It you know, it helps our mental health, it helps our physical health, it helps with all sorts of kind of processing of difficult thoughts and emotions as we are out in the outdoors. Nature is great for us to do lots of those things. And so I really began to kind of pick up on, well, why, you know, and some of the people who responded to me were from uniformed organisations. So they do outdoor youth, they work with children and young people outdoors as a matter of course. But actually, you know, I think everybody should be doing that at the moment. We should all take advantage of the fact that, you know, we will be able to meet outdoors. Outdoors will be much safer. Outdoors gives us an opportunity to talk to our young people and children about risk, in a really practical, really kind of low key, but very kind of secure way, I think. It enables us to kind of begin to build relationships again. It gives us a real sense of space, and again, that sanctuary. Actually, the idea of nature as sanctuary is a really key thread through an awful lot of life at the moment. And so, for me, the outdoor youth work is going to become more and more important, and I think that's true for working with children too. It gives them a sense of achievement in doing different things. It gives them the ability to learn new skills that perhaps they don't learn in the classroom, and certainly haven't been learning while they've been cooped up at home. Fresh air is great. We know that, don't we? And so actually, you know, I think it would be a really important thing as we go through.
It's interesting, isn't it, that many churches would be part of groups that attend or hold or sponsor camps, and that some of what we would do at a camp we don't necessarily think to do, back in our normal situation. But part of our creative thinking might be, you identified there, wide games, and that kind of activity where there's just, I don't know, sheer physical enjoyment, but also the camaraderie and the community and the laughter and all of those things. I'm going to pause that one there so that you don't have to listen to me for another 2 or 3 minutes, and it'll keep us on course. So that was Jenni sharing about those 3 words that were key for people. And we'd now like to look at where is church or where is Jesus, as somebody has just asked, and how people are connecting up their being outdoors with their, for instance, in the case of the lady that I'm just about to show you the video of, tying it in with the lectionary. She's from a Church of England background. So that there's real content taking place in those interactions outside. So I'm just going to share my screen again, and we're going to hear from Rachel Summers. I'm just trying to work out how to escape my PowerPoint here. Bear with me a moment. Okay. I think we now have what is commonly called a slight technical hitch. Stop share, that'll probably help. Right, talk amongst yourselves, so to speak, not literally. Sorry about this, I'm nearly there. We're now going to hear from Rachel Summers, who's written a series of resource books around the theme of wild church. And as the conversation unfolds, you'll see the vision that she's bringing to this whole area. So, Rachel, talk to me about wild church. How did you come up with that name, and what is wild church all about?
So my background is that I'm a school practitioner, and which means I essentially get paid to go outside and play with children, make mud pies, toast marshmallows. That's what I do for my day job. And so I suppose quite naturally I ended up taking parts of my day job, mixing up with my faith. And so that's how it's kind of developed and come about. When a few years ago I was going to Greenbelt, and I kind of started visiting some of the stuff that was happening on the Grove, the Forest Church things. And because even from when I was really little, being outside was kind of my happy place, my place where I felt kind of a sense of calm and connectiveness. It was something that I felt quite drawn to, and I really enjoyed the things that I went to and the things that I was part of. And so I was kind of coming away from that, as you do from a festival sometimes, thinking, oh, that was really great. I wish you could have a bit more of that in real life. And I thought, well, maybe that's kind of a nudge from God for me, saying, well, there isn't that happening around your way. Maybe you're the person to get on and get it happening. And so it's kind of been growing since that, really.
Great. So what actually happens in a wild church? I mean, obviously, looking through the books, a huge amount. But is there a kind of a way of doing it that can be described in a paragraph or two?
I think because of where I'm coming from, it's very much, I'm always saying Forest Church is a really broad spectrum of things. There's people who do Forest Church, where it's kind of lots to do with liturgy and word and poetry. And then there's me, where it's fed very much through my Forest School practice. And so Forest School is about experiencing through play and allowing people to kind of stumble across discoveries by themselves rather than feeding them the answers. Yeah. And I think what I do when I'm doing Forest Church, Wild Church, whatever we're wanting to call it, is trying to keep that kind of spirit of playful inquiry alive. So because we're outside, it's very much influenced by the seasonality of where we live. And here we are in the Northern Hemisphere. And even though I'm here in London, so I'm surrounded by buildings, actually, I think people have noticed over lockdown. I was talking to someone today, she said it's the first time I've really noticed spring awakening last year, and I thought that's quite interesting because it is just all around us, and you notice the seasons change. And when people first brought the Gospels to this land, of course that's what they used. They noticed how people were finding God through the seasons already, like it says in the scriptures itself, doesn't it? It says that we can see God through the work of his hands. And so lots of the things in the church calendar have been put into stuff that's happening seasonally, and so you can reflect both ways and it can teach you interesting things.
Give me a snapshot of one meeting, say around a theme of Easter. What kind of things would you be encouraging the adults and the children to be doing?
So Easter, when it comes in this country here, it comes on that cusp of spring, doesn't it? It often comes at that time of spring solstice, of that kind of balance between the lightness and the dark. And that's a theme that's really brought out through the scriptures that we're pondering in Easter time, that death and the resurrection and that kind of bursting of new life from what looked like it was dead. And that's something that even if you just go out and walk around even the streets, I was walking around the block today and you can just start to see these little plants popping up through the cracks. So what I'm doing is trying to help people to uncover these things themselves. So I always give people kind of stuff to do together. Often maybe we'll play a game together. I will kind of say, you might choose to do this thing, you might choose to do that thing, you might have a good idea of your own. That's what I do in work day by day. I very much try not to push my own agenda too much. So I think sometimes the more you tell people what to do and what to think, the less actually we're all going to be able to learn from each other. And what's quite nice is that if I'm running a session and maybe I'm saying, so if we're doing Easter, we might be trying to find signs of spring, we might ticking them off on a sheet or taking photos to share with people, or we might be making haphazard pictures, which is where you pick leaves and you bang them with a mallet and you can kind of trace the pattern of the spring leaves. It's bright green. Or we might be maybe boiling eggs over the fire and wrapping them in different plants to see what colours are going to come through, how things are changed through that water, a bit like how we're changed through the water of baptism. So things that people can reflect on like multi-layers, which makes it really suitable for all kinds of different people. So you can have younger people, you can have older people, you can have people from all different kind of backgrounds and abilities. And actually, not only can anyone access it at their own level, but because you're not putting a ceiling on it, sometimes I've found that sometimes, like when we're talking at the end, sometimes the children can come and they can say something that maybe we've never thought of before, and actually maybe they can reveal something of God to us in a way that is much harder to do in a more kind of traditional setting where it's all about here are the children and we're going to now tell them the things about the faith. Not that that's, I mean, there's a place for that, isn't it? Because educate the children, show them the way in which they should learn and which they should grow. But actually, we are all beautifully made. We're all made in God's image. And so we can all teach each other, I think.
Yeah. So I mean, this is a very broad generalisation, but there's aspects of messy church, i.e. quite tactile, and godly play, the exploratory sort of...
I think so.
I mean, it's interesting to me that in Jesus' ministry, quite often he would tell a story and then he would ask a question. And so, you know, we don't want to ask the question a lot of the time. We want to say, and so the answer is,
Yes.
but actually the asking of the question leads to a much greater ownership of the answer by the person who arrives there. So one of the things I noticed on your website was that you had found that this way of doing things was very helpful to children who might have additional needs or special needs. Can you amplify on that a little bit?
So I came into the world of Forest School originally because I was teaching children with special needs on a one-to-one basis. So it was teenagers who had special needs and behaviour issues. It meant that they weren't able to be educated in a kind of traditional setting or even any kind of educational setting. They had to be educated one-to-one. And so I would come along to the lessons with big bags of resources, and I'd have a half-term target of maybe for the child to engage with an activity for 5 minutes, or for the child to make eye contact 3 times in one session. And that'd be what I'd be working towards bit by bit by bit over a whole half term. And so I'd be getting out activities one after another and hoping something would stick. And then I found that if I started introducing activities that were outside, suddenly I was hitting the targets just like this. And that's when I went and researched and found about kind of forest school pedagogy and the importance of nature in learning and that kind of freedom of exploration. And I think sometimes being somewhere that doesn't have a ceiling, and it literally doesn't have a ceiling, does it, if you're outside under the trees and under the sky, I think sometimes that can kind of open people's minds in a way that isn't possible otherwise. I mean, certainly I find myself, I'm quite a natural fidget. I'm very easily distracted. If I'm trying to get work done, if I take my laptop and work outside in a hammock, then I'm much easier focused because the outside does the fidgeting for me. The leaves are fidgeting, the grass is fidgeting, the insects are fidgeting, the birds are fidgeting, the clouds are fidgeting. And with all of that movement, somehow that stills me. And I think that that's something that is fairly common among certainly kind of neurodiverse community, is that actually being outside is somewhere that's calming and settling. And when you're calm and settled, that does enable you to have the courage to explore.
I've just paused Rachel there. She had another 3 or 4 minutes of good stuff for us, but we need to stay on schedule. So just to let you know, if you're interested in what Jenni was sharing about from isolation to community, you can get that from jenniosborn.org. And if you're interested in what Rachel Summers was saying about being outside, she has 3 books, Wild Lent, Wild Advent and Wild Worship, available from all your normal sources. So what we'd like to do now is send you off to the breakout rooms. And in that context, we want to talk there about a couple of questions. Question 1 is, have you had previous experience of working outdoors with children? Many of you will have done via church camp, but have you had additional experience back at home? 2, what role do you think outdoor activities might play while we're still in this kind of rule of 6, maximum of 15, maybe as many as 30, not back in the building yet because we can't sing and there are still some measures in place. What role might outdoor work have there? And 3, have you done outdoor work? So during the last year. So 3 questions really. Did you used to do it? Have you done it recently? And how will it help you over the next little while? You'll be out in the breakout room for 8 or 9 minutes, and please chat freely there, and put your thoughts coming out of that. Just little one-liners when it's all done, and we go back to the 2 more. We're going to talk to 2 people now in our chat interview format, and somebody will need to make me the co-host in order for me to be able to do that. So, okay. Okay, next we're going to talk to a lady called Sally Welch, and she wrote Outdoor Church, and she is going to talk to us about why she arrived there and what shaped what she wrote in the book. She is the vicar, a church in Childbury, and has also extensively explored pilgrimage.
Dave, we can't hear it again.
For me, it was the moment when I went from working in a rural ministry environment to being in a city centre church. Now, kind of the previous 10 years, first 10 years of my ministry were very much rural, small churches right in the countryside, and kind of very in tune with the seasons. You know, Harvest Festival was very important, and you know, we never used to get very many people coming to church in summer Sundays because everyone was out digging their garden or their allotment. And then I moved to a city centre church and met, if you like, my first urban harvest festival, which was all about cans of food. And I had been used to, you know, piles of marrows and pumpkins and tomatoes and hops and flowers. And I looked at this and I just thought, my goodness me, what is all this? And obviously it makes perfect sense because the churches in question supported the local food bank and they wanted tin produce. But it made me realise, I think, the real danger of disconnect between our environment, you know, our natural environment for urban children. And these particular children had a fantastic primary school with a very small amount of land, most of it tarmac. So their engagement with the natural world was incredibly limited. And it was that got me thinking, you know, how can we do more as a church community to help these young people, these kids, engage with their environment, their natural environment.
So out of that, in the goodness of time, you wrote Outdoor Church, the book, and I'll just flash a copy of the cover for the viewers. Now, one of the things about the book is it's got 20 sessions in it. So there is an ability to explore, and you give the outline and the framework. What kind of are they sort of walking activities? Are they static group activities? What kind of things are you helping people explore, and how are you helping them explore it?
I think one of the reasons I love Outdoor Church is that the barriers that usually exist, that can exist within your building, so the intergenerational barriers, the barriers about being able to read, being able to sing the hymns because you don't know the words, all those sorts of things are broken down when you're outside. You're much more on terms, equal terms, so adults and children, and you are all engaging with the landscape and your surroundings in a way that is corporate but also individual and can be kind of tailored to your own level.
Yeah.
So they tend to be, I mean, I hope they are, ones that enable a lot of individual reaction and response, but also at the same time being aware that you are part of a community, so that a community that begins gathered, then maybe goes off and does its own thing, but then returns and is gathered again, and everybody engaged in it can bring something to the party. So everybody's contribution is equal.
And how did you find children reacting in the midst of that? One of the ladies that I've talked to talked about how she had worked with special educational needs children, and she found that they were. Sally has a lot of good things to say, but we want to try and honour our commitment to finish by 11:35ish, and you'll be able to view the full video, which is several more minutes, on our YouTube channel, and you'll be informed about that in an email that will follow through after this. The final person I wanted to talk to is a lady called Lucy Hutson, and she does a thing called Muddy Church. And her website is a little bit of a kind of gathering place for people who are doing outside church. And I want to show you a clip from the interview that I did with her, which will feed into all of the things that we've been talking about over the last several minutes. This is Lucy Hutson. Well, it's great to be talking to Lucy now, who I've just introduced to you. And I've got several questions for you, Lucy, so let's get right down to it. Tell us briefly, what is Muddy Church? Intriguing title.
So Muddy Church started as asset-based community development, a desire really to reach out into the community. It's an intergenerational idea, but looking at ways that we can go outside the church building to connect with God, to connect with our community, and to connect with each other, and finding nature as kind of the connecting point within all of that.
There may be multiple ways of doing Muddy Church, but can you give us a kind of, the 2 or 3 things that we often do include?
Yeah, so some of the main ideas behind Muddy Church is the whole idea of valuing each person. So we really believe that everybody is able to connect with God, to hear God, to sense God, wherever they are on the faith journey, whatever age they are. Yep. So it's really important for us that, if you've got a 3-year-old at your Muddy Church and they say, oh, look at this, we stop and we look and we wonder at that as much as if, the vicar or the pastor or anybody of any other age comes along and says, oh, look at this that God is doing. And we can all hear and see God and sense God. So that's really one of the main ideas, that everybody is valued, everybody is included. And in that, looking at the ways that we do Muddy Church, that it's accessible for all. Yes. So not having events that cost a lot of money or that you've got to pay for, having places that Muddy Church can happen that people can access. So local in your community, you've not got to drive to them, you've not got to catch 3 buses, but also that, it's pathways that people can come on and walk on, regardless of if they've got a wheelchair, a pushchair, 4 legs, 2 legs, walking sticks, toddling along, or, kind of needing a little bit of help. So the accessibility is really important in all of the senses.
So a lot of it involves walking. Are there static moments, or how does that side of things work?
Yeah, so our big phrase at Muddy Church is wondering and wandering together. So it's very much not about walking in the sense of we're going on a 10-mile hike. Some people might want to do that, but generally we're looking at engaging people in a wander, just noticing the outdoors, and that's really important. I've talked quite often recently about a study by Miles Richardson at the University of Derby, who talks about nature connectedness, and that research said that going outside didn't really change people's well-being or connection to nature. It was when you stopped and noticed. Yep. I think that's a big part of Muddy Church, that we don't just want to get people outside. We want to help people to connect with the place that they're in and the people that they're with. So that's really important. So it is about pausing, being still, noticing, wandering in that.
I'm just going to pause the video just there and give you permission to leave if you have another time constraint. Lucy has some great things to say, and I'd just like to show you the rest of the video, but I don't want you to feel that you need to stay if there's something else that you need to do. It's about another 3 minutes. It'll be well worth viewing, but if you've got to be somewhere else, then please go. I saw a gardening program where they made I think it was a metre square little frame on the ground, and then they spent half an hour, I think, to an hour with people saying, right, what's in this metre square? And, of course, it was sort of ever-changing and there was a lot there. Now, tell me what kind of church, from your experience, is picking up on the Muddy Church idea. What are they walking to the table anticipating, so to speak?
So we have churches from every background all over the UK and beyond. So we've got a number of people in North America, New Zealand, Australia. So every experience and expression of Muddy Church is different, and that's one of the things that's really important to me. I don't have a big ownership of you must do this and you must do that, because it is about engaging in your community. So for some people, they have lovely church grounds and they can use their church grounds. Other people are using graveyards. Some people are community groups or working with toddlers or in schools. So it really is open to the whole spectrum of people, but looking at what is in your community, what are the treasures and the gifts in your community, and how is God talking to you about how you can use them.
Okay, everybody, we'd like to let you know that the 4 videos from this segment will be available in full on our YouTube channel shortly, sometime within the next 48 to 72 hours. All of our 4 speakers, but particularly the ones where we had to come away 2 or 3 minutes earlier, had more to say, and you may find that helpful. We're going to formally close our time together. We want to thank you for coming. I believe that Lucy may still be on the call. And as we begin to go, if any of you want to have a quick chat with her, if she's available, then sort of linger behind. We'll open up the mics and you can have a quick word with her. We'll probably close the call altogether in about 10 minutes. But we want to bring this part of our time formally to an end. So thanks, everybody. Thanks for being with us this morning. We hope that there was a lot of food for thought there. We've highlighted Lucy. She is indeed with us. Kay Morgan Gers mentioned in there, follow us on Twitter, at Faithfull Jen. If you're wanting to see everybody and understand who's still here, then on your screen with all the faces, there's a little square with 9 dots. If you hit that, then you'll be able to get out to a bigger group. Unmute yourself if you want to ask Lucy a question. Just while she's here, I mean, why not?
Hi, Lucy. I'm just going to steal the opportunity if that's okay. I'm up in Glasgow, and we as a church are thinking big in terms of, well, no, we're not thinking big, we're thinking and we're processing, we're listening through the season about what church is going to look like. We are no longer restricted in the ways that we are. And intergenerational, I'm very new to this intergenerational concept. We have a very wide breadth of our congregation, lovely outdoors. How do the older generation respond to getting out when they're quite used to sitting in their maybe set place in the church? We've got very forward-thinking older people in our joint congregation, but in terms of the elements in Scotland, when you may have a lot of mud, how does that work, and how do you process and how do you take people on a journey through that process?
Generally, it's through invitation. So it's never been, we aren't meeting in church, you must come to this. But an invitation that if people would like to come, And often one of the things that I talked to Dave about, we find that actually a lot of older generation, and for people maybe who are living on their own, the isolation, they really love coming to Muddy Church because it's that chance to walk with somebody else, to share that companionship. And, you know, I talk quite often about seeing a lovely old guy who was 90 and just this amazing life that he'd had, walking beside a 15-year-old, and they were sharing stories and asking questions, and that would never have happened in a church setting.
In a pew, yeah.
So, and I think obviously some people, as they're getting older, mobility is limited. So thinking about where you're doing your activity, you know, not making it down a load of steps or up steep hills, but finding a space where you can wander, and it's not going to limit people. But it just has happened very naturally that I think I know, even thinking my mother-in-law is just so glad to get outside and to be able to have some outside space, and to be able to do that with other people is such a treasure, you know. And the fact that we might be allowed that a little bit more, even if it's in a group of, you know, 2 or 6, having somebody to walk alongside and to ask those questions. How's your soul? You know, that maybe nobody's asked you for the last year, and in all the challenges of that. So it just tends to happen.
One thing I would chip in, if people challenge you about, you know, is this really church? Deuteronomy 6 says, when you walk down the road with them, and at this point about the intergenerational conversations, in my church, the young men always used to talk to, or the young children used to talk to the old men about football, and you could see people tucking sometimes, that this wasn't a godly spiritual conversation. But actually, both parties didn't often have intergenerational conversations of that kind. And the connection then opens up the other conversations. Some of these ideas that we're discussing here will open up the positive flow of connection between the generations. Just a thought.
Yeah, definitely. If it's, you know, if it's not church, I always go. I think Dave said, somebody said at the beginning that verse from Genesis 3 where God walked in the garden. And we go, well, God could have done anything. Why didn't he build a church? Why didn't he build a shelter? He chose to walk in the garden with people. You know, that the place of delight was a garden. So if we're going to say, you know, it's not church, then I question, and some people might question the whole Genesis narrative anyway, but I question then, why didn't God build, you know, and say, I'll meet you there at 10 o'clock in the morning and we can have a chat then? He didn't. He chose to walk with people. And Emmaus Road, you know, there's so many examples in the Bible of, and I know some of that's cultural, but walking together and being alongside people. And definitely what Dave says, you know, that relationship, particularly for so many people within both generations, is so broken right now, whether it's because families live in different locations and you can't see each other, whether it's because of family breakdown, but so often young people and children don't have a grandparent, and whether it's, I remember that man because he always gave us a sweet.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, and somebody precious, and relating that and opening up those conversations. That there's been loads about it with, you know, children going from nurseries going into care homes and seeing that relationship. Well, let's see it in our churches. You know, it's not just go schools are doing this and nursing homes are doing this and nurseries are doing this, but let's see this in our churches with that whole family together.
And my daughter recently wrote a card to one of our members of the congregation in Fairford because his wife had died, and she'd asked for the address. I knew she was going to write, but when they said at the funeral that a young lady had written and said that this lady was like an adopted granny, I was pretty sure it was my daughter and checked with her, and she said yes, it was. And it had touched the family so much to hear that. It was actually read out at the Cram, which I was watching online.
I just wanted to say that we do more church because I live on Dartmoor. So we do more church quarterly, and it's open to anybody who wants to come from the town. And old people, the more the more mature people love it, just being out, and it's so easier to have a conversation not in somebody's building. You can talk about anything, God into it outside, and people are more likely to join in outside, and they feel that they can take part in the conversation. So outside church is wonderful.
Great. There's a lady called Kaylee, I think, wants to perhaps ask a question. If that's you, Kaylee, speak up now.
Hi, I just had a quick question for Lucy regarding like kit. Like, do you have like a resource list on the website? Like, do you tend to take like a backpack with a few things in? Obviously, you're going to be out in nature, or do you just kind of tend to prepare families and just say, look, we're going to be out. There may not be toilets. There may not be this, that, and the other. Do you know what I mean? Like that kind of practical side of things.
So I don't do kind of, like I said, I don't do long kind of 10-kilometer walks, as you will tell from my build. I'm really not into that. And I think Kay agreed as well, having something that's accessible. So having a wander that isn't a long journey, generally, I mean, we've tended to do it for an hour. I know often when people are doing Muddy Church, they do it for an hour, but it stretches into 3. And normally where we held Muddy Church, when we could gather, there was a community cafe at it, so there was toilets there. That's all changed in lockdown, so toilets is a big issue, and I wouldn't recommend people, don't bring a bucket with you kind of thing. It's just one of those issues. In terms of resources, people often ask me this, going, oh, I've got some funding, what can I buy? I go, the whole idea behind Muddy Church is it's free. We go out, you might want to buy people drinks or a pack of biscuits or a bacon sandwich or a veggie burger sandwich, whatever. But generally it's about going out and noticing what God's given to us. So we always do say, come prepared for the weather. Always say that children remain, because we do it intergenerationally, so always say and recommend people say children remain the responsibility of their parents or whoever's brought them, of an adult, so that just kind of gives that sense of responsibility, but also it engages people. Then they know they're going to be engaging together. But just please wear appropriate clothing for the weather, because we all have that joys of Britain. But I've said to a few people, I really wasn't an outdoorsy person at all. I'm not an eco warrior person at all. But more and more as you go outside, you begin to appreciate things. So the wind around you and hearing that and feeling that is just so revitalizing sometimes. And some people will only come when it's sunny, and some people will actually not want to come when it's sunny. So appreciating, you might have slightly different people, but often you get people as a community who gather together and really engage in that. So it's good to have a little first aid kit. But beyond that, that's just general, isn't it? Wipes, sanitizer, and all those kind of things these days.
Yeah, and I guess if you wanted to branch out, because my history as well as a forest school, I work in a forest school setting. I guess if you wanted to branch out like some of the other speakers today, it would obviously require a few more
definitely
elements. But okay, so as a basic quote unquote, that's really helpful to know that it doesn't actually really require that much at all.
No, I think if you're doing a gathering in a setting, so a bit like Rachel Summers has said, and like you'll know, the whole forest school idea, you need then some other things like a sitting space and something appropriate to that. You might say to people, bring a picnic blanket and we're going to stop at the end and have a little sit down, bring a packed lunch with you, whatever. But generally it's very much about just go out and, I say nothing against Baker Ross in case they're on here, but you don't need to buy a bag of pine cones from Baker Ross. They're there already. And actually there's so much fun and excitement and wonder in discovering a pine cone on the ground for yourself and looking at the different ones, some that have been chewed and nibbled and some that are a bit grotty and some that are beautifully formed, and it's really is about using what God's given us and noticing that, and obviously being very respectful of not damaging, so don't take some poor animals home. That isn't the point of it at all, but it is that connection and then learning and thinking, if you take that, what's going, where's that little beetle going to live tonight? Those kind of things.
So a couple of quick things. Lucy, tell everybody about your webpage and Facebook, and then I'd like to invite a lady called Rosetta Parkins to answer a question, and then shortly after that we should probably wrap up. There are a considerable number of you still here, but which is good, it's all good. So Lucy, quickly about the web thing, and then Rosetta will ask her a question.
Yeah, so the website's got all of our resources. All of our resources are absolutely free. I've designed them all, so there is no kind of copyright or anything else. I give them free as a mission. My heart is that if people can find ways to share the good news and they can use our resources to do that, that's fantastic. Equally, there are loads of other fantastic resources out there. I saw earlier Together at Home and Scripture Union have been doing some trails, but all of the different partners in Hand of Hand, Ollie, Salvation Army with Get Out. There's loads of resources out there. If you want to look at the Muddy Church stuff, it's www.muddychurch.co.uk. There's loads of stuff on there. You can contact me through there. The Facebook page and Instagram and YouTube and all of that. Facebook page is, if you put in Muddy Church or Muddy Wondering, and you'll find us there. And there's a whole resource group attached to that with all of our resources on there and other people's, because it's very much about a community sharing together. And actually, we did this bit of the trail, but then we did this. We had a bear trail that had 4 parts, and then it developed into a whole teddy bear's picnic for other people. So all of it is free. You are very welcome to use it. You don't have to use the name Muddy Church. I don't care. You can call it whatever you want that's appropriate to your setting, your group, whatever you want to do with it. But if you want to use Muddy Church, it's there. You can use it. If you want to call it Welly Wangers, you can do that if that's good for you. There's nothing from me that is a hassle on terms of that.
Rosetta.
Thank you. It is so good to hear from you, Lucy, with your Muddy Church, because I think we do a thing what we call a walk in the park, the same thing. And it's really good. We're a group of us. Then we would stop and we would read the Bible, and then we would chat, and we would look at the trees as well. And, it's a good thing for nature. And we walk and stuff just for an hour, and I think it's really good. We haven't done it with the youth, but it's a good idea for me to take back to my church. And we might do something like that for the young people, which is very, very good. I quite enjoy that. Thank you.
Thanks, Rosetta. I just did some training. We do say it's intergenerational, but also there's people who use it just for toddlers, that use it for instead of their Sunday service for children, and certainly for young people. My background is youth work. I'm a qualified youth worker, and that's kind of one of the I teach in university for youth workers, so it's one of my passions. But I just think it's so important. So few young people have a connection to nature at a time when they need that sense of connection, belonging, understanding who they are and how they fit into the world. And actually, if we can take them outside and help them understand that, and the freedom of just walking together, it doesn't have to be anything great. You might go to the chip shop, the campfires. I think so many of us will understand the fun of having a campfire and sitting around it, or just sitting one evening and looking at the stars. It really is those simple things that God is amazing, isn't he? This wonderful world that he's created. And what a shame if all we do is sit in a building and never notice a creative God around us.
I'll take that back to my church, and we'll do something with the young people about that. I love it. Thank you.
Man. So there is so much more questions we could ask, so much more thinking we could do, but and a third of you are still here, but we probably should, and people are just arriving as well. Right. Anyway, so I'm going to pray, and then we're going to let you go. Lucy, thank you for hanging on in there and for responding.
Thank you for inviting me.
But yeah, and somebody's even having ideas in the chat there. This is all good stuff. I'm going to pray. Dear Lord God and Father, we thank you for this beautiful creation you set us in. We thank you that we can be in it even when we can't be in our buildings. We pray that there'll be multiple levels of creativity that come out of the fertilization of conversation that has taken place here, and that you will cause many to wonder at who you are because of what we do. Amen.
Amen.
One little idea that came from the chat that it's worth looking at is many of you will be familiar with Messy Church, and you may have church grounds, and you could do Messy Church in your church grounds, and some churches are already doing Messy Church back in the building, but Messy Church in the grounds is another option. And obviously care over social distancing, all those kind of things, but sometimes it is repurposing an old idea into a new context, as well as the completely new ideas. Thank you, everybody. It's actually been a little bit unusual.
Thank you so much.
To stay after nearly half an hour.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Lucy.
Thank you.
Cheers, everybody. You can go now, please. Please go.
We're not going. We're not going.
Thank you. Thank you.